Welcome to Charts Today, European Opening. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Monday, the 12th of November, comes to you from London. We start by looking at the dollar index. We're seeing the dollar pushing to new highs here. And making new 17-month highs, in fact. So really surging ahead these last few days. So dollar strength really been a key factor, and that's leading to euro weakness. We're seeing the euro now making 17-month lows, looking bearish on all three time frames, and we're starting to see the emergence of new downside targets activated. So we've got this target now to 95 cents, which is activated, suggesting that we could go below parity in time. Looking at the yen against the dollar, we see dollar strength on all three time frames. Against sterling, we see sterling weaker against the dollar, back in that 128 zone. So sterling strength has been short-lived. And looking against the euro, we see the sterling actually moving into bearish territory here as well. And against the Swiss franc, lower. And against the Aussie dollar, you're seeing push lower as well with downside targets. Bitcoin down very slightly this morning, but still in bearish territory on all three time frames. And the US stock markets closed lower last week. We saw the S&P 500 on Friday was down 0.9%, just under 1%. The Nasdaq was down quite heavily as well. So we are still holding a short-term bullish stance, but a weak recovery, which is worrying for the market. The Dow was down 0.7%. And the Russell index was also lower and still bearish on that medium-term chart. The futures slightly higher on the S&P this morning. The Nasdaq future actually up 1/3%, so we may just see US markets opening higher. The UK market is up 1/3% this morning, so that's looking a little bit better. Still bearish on that medium and long-term chart, of course. And mid-caps in the UK, much the same picture, where lower, medium, and long term. The DAX in Germany down 0.5%, and the CAC 40 down 0.17%, so not as bad. Japan closed fairly flat. The Hang Seng index was up slightly, and China was up over 1%, but in reality, Chinese stocks have looked pretty bearish now for some time, and this, whilst we are in short-term bullish mode, we've got very bearish scenarios on the medium and long-term chart, and as regular watchers will know, we've been very bearish on China all year. Sensex in India was up 2/3%, so looking a bit stronger there, bullish on the short-term chart, and the Aussie market was up 1/3%. Looking at commodities, Brent crude up quite sharply this morning, up 2%. Not enough to take it into short-term bullish territory, and we are still medium-term bearish. WTI also up 1.5%, still short-term bearish with downside targets hanging over us. US nat gas continues to surge ahead, sitting at $3.78. And now closing at multi-year highs, looks like 4-year highs, so looking really bullish there. Taking a look at gold, gold is down 0.25%. We're in the low 1200s, so we are just sitting in bearish territory here in the short-term chart, and the medium-term chart just not quite making it to bullish. Silver also looking bearish as well in the short term. US 10-year yields sitting fairly consistently at this 3.19%, just taking us a little bit short-term bearish there, but at the moment still holding very strong medium and long-term positions. Taking a look at the futures, we see, the Bund future, the German bond, we see a little bit of recovery here in the bond prices as we saw yields just falling away a little bit. Amazon on Friday was actually managed to, most tech stocks were down, but we're still in bullish territory on the short-term chart. Apple, we're in bearish territory on the short-term chart. That's our main concern. And Google actually just fairly flat, and Facebook also bearish on the short-term chart. All of this data coming to you from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a private user, Metastock Zenith. If we look to the market's stocks, I'm now using Yahoo Finance data here. So we see here the indices were down quite heavily on in the US on Friday. The Nasdaq was actually down 1.6%. Tech stocks really driving the falls, and across Asia we see a mixed picture again. Some India slightly down, but we're seeing most Far Eastern markets were up. Looking at the Nasdaq on Friday, we had really big falls on Activision Blizzard, down 12%. That's really changed the nature of that chart. Just really fallen out of bed there. Alphabet were down 1.5%, and we said Amazon lower as well. We're seeing a lot of these relative performances to the Dow Jones just falling away. So really starting to have an impact. Apple down nearly 2%. That's our main concern. Apple has actually been relatively strong up until recently. Now Apple is starting to crack. That is a big worry for tech. Uh, Facebook down a further 2%. That 150 level now becoming quite serious resistance. Looking at some of the other big stocks, we had Microsoft down 2%. Netflix down 4%, 4.5%, and Nvidia not down as sharply as they have been, but still looking like it's the run is well and truly over there. Tesla were down 0.8%. Looking at the Aussie market, we have had some big rises here. Healthcote up 14%, Linus up 9%. On the downside, we see Afterpay touchdown 7%. Lend-Lease had a terrible day on Friday, falling further today, down a further 6%. In India, we've got the Titan company. We can see here most stocks down in India. We've got the Titan company 5% higher. Tech Mahindra is 3% higher, still looking quite strong, this chart. But on the downside, in India, this is the Nifty 50. Hindustan Petroleum down 6%. Tata Motors down 4%. So we are seeing quite significant moves there. China, we're seeing most stocks up, and we can just see that by the mix there. Only a handful of stocks lower. And in Hong Kong, again, a mixed picture, not as clear as the Chinese market, but predominantly up. And the Nikkei 225, again, we're seeing most of the big stocks here up. Just looking for the worst performances there. We do have some quite big falls here, 18% lower on Mitsui Mining. So there we are seeing still potential for big falls in Asia. Tao down 11%, Citizen Watch Company down 7%. Taking a look across to Europe at the open, we see the FTSE 100. Simple thing to do here is just to rank by performance. We're seeing the commodity stocks higher. Rio Tinto up 3%, BHP up 3%, Antofagasta up 3%. So it's all the commodity stocks here. Anglo American, BP Dutch and Royal Dutch Shell up 2%. That higher oil price this morning helping, but we are bearish on these charts as well in the medium term. Looking to the fallers, Bats down 8% today, so that's a really big fall in Europe. Imperial Brands down 3%, so tobacco stock's been really badly hit. And EasyJet down nearly 3%. Ocado down just under 3%. So we are still seeing a continuing sell-off there. Looking at the 250, we see Hunting Group up 6%, Premier Oil up 5%, and on the other side of the coin, AA down 5% today. Sports Direct down 4.5%. So we really are seeing quite big sell-off there, really, over the last year. So last few months, we've really seen that falling away. Underperformed the Dow by 15% this year. Across Europe, looking at the Eurostoxx 600 list. Again, all data coming from Yahoo. We see in Oslo we've got Subsea up 3%. Telecom Italia actually up 3.8%. And on the downside, not surprised to see Bats performing there. SimCorp in Copenhagen actually performing even worse. Zurich Airport, Flughafen Zurich down as well, down 8%. So, and SAP in Germany down 4%. So we are seeing some quite big falls. That's it for today until the open later in the US. Until then, happy charting. See you then.